A beggar lived at a railway station in a certain city. He earned his livelihood by begging from passengers seated in the trains that arrived at and departed from the station. One day, while he was begging, he spotted a tall man dressed in a suit and boots. He thought to himself, "This man looks very wealthy. If I beg from him, he will surely give me a generous amount of money." He approached the tall man and began to beg. Upon seeing the beggar, the tall man asked, "Do you do nothing but beg all the time? Do you ever give anything to anyone?" The beggar replied, "Sir, I am a beggar. I am always asking things of people. I have no means or standing to be able to give anything to anyone." The tall man responded, "If you cannot give anything to anyone, then you have no right to beg either. I am a merchant, and I believe in the principle of exchange, giving and taking. I can only give you something in return if you have something to offer me." Having said this, the tall man boarded the train and departed. Meanwhile, the beggar began to ponder the words the man had spoken. The tall man's words struck a deep chord in the beggar's heart. He began to think, "Perhaps the reason I do not receive much money in alms is that I am unable to offer anything in return. But I am a beggar. I possess nothing of value to give to anyone. Yet how long can I go on merely asking of people without ever giving anything back?" After much contemplation, the beggar resolved that for anyone who gave him alms, he would, in return, definitely give them something as well. However, a question now nagged at his mind. Since he was a beggar himself, what could he possibly offer others in exchange for their alms? 2 days passed as he wrestled with this thought, yet he found no answer to his question. On the third day, as he sat near the station, his gaze fell upon some flowers blooming on the plants growing in the vicinity. He thought, "Why don't I offer people some flowers in exchange for their alms?" He liked this idea very much, so he plucked a few flowers from the plants. He then went into the train to beg. From that moment on, whenever someone gave him alms, he would offer them some flowers in return. People would happily accept the flowers and keep them. From then on, the beggar would gather fresh flowers every day and distribute them to people in exchange for their alms. Within just a few days, he realized that. Now, a great many people began giving him alms. He used to gather all the flowers growing near the station. As long as he had flowers with him, many people would give him alms. But once the flowers were all distributed, he would receive no alms at all. This routine continued day after day. One day, while he was begging, he noticed that the very tall man, the one who had inspired him to offer flowers in exchange for alms, was seated on the train. He immediately approached the man and, while begging, said, "Today I have some flowers to offer you. Please give me some alms, and in return I will give you some flowers." The tall man gave him some money as alms, and the beggar handed him a few flowers. The tall man was delighted by this gesture. He exclaimed, "Wow, that is wonderful. Today you too have become a merchant, just like me." Saying this, and holding the flowers, the tall man disembarked at his station. However, the words spoken by the tall man once again struck a deep chord in the beggar's heart. He began to ponder those words over and over again, and a sense of profound happiness washed over him. His eyes began to sparkle. He felt as though he had finally grasped the key to success, the very key that could transform his entire life. He immediately stepped off the train and, filled with excitement, looked up at the sky and shouted at the top of his lungs, "I am not a beggar. I am a merchant. I, too, can become rich." When people saw him, they assumed the beggar had gone mad. From that day on, the beggar was never seen at that station again. However, 6 months later, 2 men dressed in suits and boots were traveling on that very same train. When they spotted each other, one of them extended his hand to the other and asked, "Do you recognize me?" The second man replied, "No, as far as I can recall, this is our first meeting." The first man smiled and said, "No, try to remember, this is not our first meeting, but actually our third." The second man looked puzzled and asked, "I don't recall. By the way, when did we meet the previous 2 times?" The first man smiled again and explained, "We met twice before, right here on this very train. I am that beggar. The one whom you told during our first meeting what I should do with my life, and whom you told during our second meeting who I truly am." The second man smiled, and looking utterly astonished, simply said, "Oh, I remember. You are the same beggar to whom I once refused to give alms. And on a second occasion I bought some flowers from you. But tell me, where are you off to today, dressed in a suit and boots? And what exactly are you doing these days?" The first man replied, "Yes, I am indeed that very beggar. However, today I am a major flower merchant, and I am traveling to another city on business related to this trade." After pausing for a moment, he continued, "During our first meeting, you shared with me a fundamental law of nature, that we receive something only when we give something in return. This principle of give and take truly works. I have experienced it firsthand. Yet, for the longest time, I continued to view myself merely as a beggar. I never once dared to think beyond that identity. It was during our second encounter that you pointed out to me that I had in fact already become a merchant. That was the moment I truly grasped that I was no longer a beggar, but a businessman. I finally understood why people were giving me money. They weren't offering me alms, but rather paying the fair price for the flowers I sold. Everyone was eager to buy my flowers because they simply couldn't find them at such affordable rates anywhere else. In the eyes of the world, I was a small-time merchant. Yet, in my own eyes, I remained nothing more than a beggar. It was only after you pointed it out that I realized I was, in reality, a small-scale entrepreneur. Using the money I had earned by selling flowers on the train, I purchased a large stock of fresh blooms and established myself as a flower merchant. The people here have a deep love for flowers, and it is precisely this passion of theirs that has transformed me into a major flower merchant today." Both merchants were now beaming with happiness. Upon reaching the station, they disembarked together and walked on, engaging in conversation about their respective trades. Friends, there is a great deal we can learn from this story. The tall merchant in the tale possessed a profound understanding of the principle of give and take. Indeed, all the world's most successful merchants have achieved their success by applying this very law of life. He shared this formula with the beggar, who in turn embraced this natural law, and the transformative impact on his life became immediately apparent. He changed his mindset, and his life changed along with it. This story teaches us that if we are willing to shift our perspective, there is nothing we cannot achieve. If we continue to view ourselves as insignificant, we will forever remain so. To attain greatness, we must transform our thinking and cultivate a grander vision of ourselves. The essence of this story is that success lies hidden within your mindset. Awaken your sense of self-worth, expand the scope of your thinking, and see how you reach the pinnacle of success.